Support this podcast via our Patreon and get more writerly goodness. Visit patreon.com/nanocast to join up.
Welcome to NaNoWriMo Every Month. My name is J. Daniel Sawyer. I'm the author of some 20 books, 34 short stories, and numerous articles and other things, and I am your guide on this journey to use NaNoWriMo to level up to professional output levels. Welcome to The Questions, Episode 46. Today, Tim asks, I had a thought this morning about nonfiction because I've had difficulty switching between fiction and the stories from my life I'm writing on the side. I realized this could be relevant to switching stories as well. My question, how do you switch between projects, or is it a bad idea altogether to switch between genres or stories while in progress? Well, Tim, this one varies a lot, I think, by writer. There are some people who have no problem whatsoever switching between projects. There are some people for whom switching between projects is very difficult, and there are some people in between who can switch well between some projects and not between others. I'm one that switches fairly easily, with some exceptions depending on how close the projects are or what my emotional state is at the time. Different seasons of life seem to have an effect on this for me. I have no problem whatsoever switching between fiction and nonfiction at any time. I trained up in both of them separately and in parallel. I would write essays for homework in school even as far back as elementary school, and then when I was done I would go and I would write my fiction. Switching between tasks, not that difficult for me. When it comes to switching between stories, I find I have a more difficult time switching between stories that are closely related than stories that are further apart. For example, I've got a lot of trouble switching between a Suave Rob book and a Clark Lantham book, which I found out the hard way this last fall when I wrote 2 Lantham books and a Suave Rob book that I wound up having to put on hold till I finished the Lantham books. And the reason is that the narrative voice in both is a tight first person that's breaking the fourth wall a lot. The fact that one of them speaks like a hard-boiled detective and one of them speaks like a surfer dude wasn't enough of a difference for me to be able to keep the points of view and the characters separate in my head, so I ended up having to put Suave Rob on hold till I finished the Lantham books. As far as how you do it, not to be fatuous, but you do it the same way that you would switch between your day job and your home, or between driving and shopping for groceries at the store. You finish one thing, you do another. You pull your head out of the activity you're finishing, you put it in the new activity. I think the notion that it's hard to switch between stories comes from an overinflated idea of the importance of ideas. Ideas are just things. We have a zillion of them every day. They're not all that important unless we act on them and do something with them. But we tend to misattribute the integrity of our creative process to the ideas or to hanging in a certain headspace all the time so that we're always doing work on it or whatnot. As humans, we confuse effort for action. We tend to count the hours we're researching a project as hours spent on that project, but that's not the case, as anyone who has ever researched a topic to death and then not done the project will tell you. Stanley Kubrick, for example, famously spent 20 years researching a project on Napoleon, only never to do the Napoleon film. All of that was wasted time. Now, some of it he reapplied to Barry Lyndon, but he didn't spend 20 years working on his Napoleon film. He spent 20 years thinking about his Napoleon film, and that's something that cost the rest of us and himself dearly in terms of the number of films he put out. He's one of my favorite directors, and the fact that he was so reluctant to actually go make movies because of his perfectionism is one of the things I will never forgive him for, because he was so brilliant when he was actually making movies. If an idea is so much at the front of your brain that you can't let it go and you have to be obsessing over it all the time, that's the one you should be writing, and, you sit down, you spend all your writing time and write it through. If something isn't that white hot, or you've got deadlines that constrain you from working straight through a project, then you're going to need to balance and juggle. And you do that by having times that you do one, times that you do the other. whether they're subsequent shifts on the same day or whether you do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on your science fiction novel and Thursday, Friday, Saturday on your crime novel or your romance. Whatever it takes to work it out and get yourself in those grooves. Now you can use, I'll talk about this later in this recording block. I don't know when the episode will come up for you, but someone else has asked a question about personal rituals before writing. And I'll talk about this in some greater detail, but you can employ personal rituals to act sort of as a clutch to help you shift gears, putting on a different music to set a different mood, that kind of thing. But whatever it takes for you, and you'll find what works, like so many other things, through trial and error and experimentation, that's the thing you should do. And if it stops working for you, you'll have to go back into a trial and error phase till you find something that works for you again. But all that said, probably the single most important part about it is to remember that it's not very important. It's not very difficult. The more you pump it up in your head as some great, massive feat to move between projects, the more difficult it's going to be for you, whereas the more you'll relax and just treat it like any other task in life, the easier time you'll have moving between projects. I hope that helps, and I'll see you tomorrow. NaNoWriMo Every Month is written and presented by J. Daniel Sawyer and produced by Artistic Whispers Productions. Visit our website at NaNoWriMoEveryMonth.com and leave a tip in the tip jar or join the Patreon to support this podcast. NaNoWriMo Every Month is copyright 2016 by J. Daniel Sawyer and Artistic Whispers Productions and is released under a Creative Commons Non-Commercial Attribution No Derivatives license.